Really think about this for a second. How can a doctor possibly spot a tiny torn ligament that's hidden deep inside your knee? Or even crazier, how can they see cancer cells actually at work? The answer, of course, is technology. Amazing technology that lets us peer right past our skin and bones and uncover the body's biggest secrets.
You know, for years, x-rays have been the go-to. They're fantastic for looking at our skeleton, right? Broken bone, get an x-ray. But what about everything else? All the soft stuff, your ligaments, your organs, your brain, all the parts that really make us, well, us. For that, we need a totally different kind of sight. Okay, so let's meet our first tool. This is the MRI, which stands for magnetic resonance imaging. And the key to figuring out how this thing works is surprisingly simple. It's all about water. You can think of an MRI as just this master mapper, charting out all the water inside your body. So stick with me here. Every single molecule of water in your body has hydrogen atoms, right? And inside each of those is a little thing called a proton. Now here's the cool part. Every one of those protons acts like a tiny microscopic magnet. And since our bodies are, like 60–70% water, that means we are just jam-packed with these little magnets. So how does an MRI actually use all those tiny magnets? Well, it's basically a four-step dance. First, you slide into this machine with a giant magnet that gets all your body's little protons to line up, like soldiers at attention. Then, bam, a radio pulse comes in and knocks them all out of alignment. Step 3, as those protons snap back into line, they give off a little signal. And finally, a super smart computer listens to all those signals and turns them into an incredibly detailed picture. But wait, it gets even cooler. A radiologist can actually tweak the settings on the machine to highlight different things. It's kind of like slapping a different filter on a photo to make certain colors pop. And this lets them create two really fundamental types of MRI images. Okay, take a look at this. The difference is pretty stark, right? On the left, you've got what's called a T1 image. Radiologists sometimes call this the anatomy sequence because, well, it gives you a super clear picture of the body's structure. But then look over on the right. That's a T2 image, and they call that one the pathology sequence. Looks totally different, doesn't it? And here is the absolute key difference between them. In that T1 image, water shows up as dark, great for seeing the solid stuff. But in a T2 image, water is bright white. Now, why does that matter? Well, think about what happens when something's wrong. There's usually fluid, right? Swelling, inflammation, even some tumors. They're full of water. So on a T2 scan, the problem areas literally light up. Okay, so the MRI gives us this perfect, detailed map of the body's structure. But what if the doctor needs more? What if they need to see how the body is actually working? Not just the form, but the function. And for that, we need a whole different tool. This is where the PET scan comes in. PET stands for positron emission tomography, and we're not mapping water anymore. Nope, this is all about tracking activity right down at the cellular level. So a PET scan is what's known as nuclear medicine. And I know that sounds kind of scary, but the idea behind it is actually pretty straightforward. It just uses a very, very tiny amount of a radioactive substance, they call it a tracer, to find out which cells in your body are working the hardest, which ones are the most active. Here's the really clever part. That tracer is attached to something that looks a lot like sugar. And why sugar? Well, think about cells that are out of control, like cancer cells. They are incredibly hungry for energy. They just gobble up sugar like crazy. So the PET scanner just looks for where all that radioactive sugar went, and boom, it creates a map of the body's biggest energy hogs, lighting up the exact spots a doctor needs to see. Okay, so now we have two amazing scanners, right? The MRI is the master of structure, and the PET scan is the expert on function. So the big question is, when do you use which? How does a doctor choose the right tool for the job? Well, the MRI is your go-to when you need incredible high-definition detail. We're talking about spotting a torn ligament in your knee, seeing tiny changes in the brain or spinal cord. It gives you that really precise look at soft tissues that other scans just can't see. It's all about showing you exactly what is there and in stunning detail. The PET scan, though, it's on a totally different mission. Its main job is to find those super active cells. This is huge in cancer care. Doctors use it to see if a cancer has spread, to diagnose certain types of cancer in the first place, or even to check if a treatment is actually working. It's not about the perfect picture. It's about seeing what the cells are doing. but what if you need both? I mean, what if you need to see the structure and the function? Well, sometimes doctors combine them. They use something called a PET-CT scan. This is a hybrid that basically overlays the hotspot function map from the PET scan onto the detailed anatomical map from a CT scan. It gives them the whole story in one single picture.
Okay, before we wrap this up, we absolutely have to talk about safety. These are incredibly powerful machines, and you have to know the roles. And this is especially true when it comes to the MRI. Listen to this quote, because it really puts things in perspective. Death and injury have occurred when metal objects became projectiles in a magnetic field. That's a serious, sobering reminder of the raw power we're talking about here. The magnet in an MRI isn't just strong, it's thousands of times stronger than the Earth's entire magnetic field. And here is the one thing, the single most important thing you have to remember about an MRI. That magnet is always on. They never, ever turn it off. That means any metal object that gets near that machine can turn into a dangerous projectile. So you have to tell the staff about any metal in or on your body. Pacemakers, implants, you name it. And of course, no jewelry, no watches, no loose metal at all. This isn't just a suggestion, it is a life or death rule. Now, for PET scans, the safety issue is different. Because of that radioactive tracer we talked about, the main concern is pregnancy. It's generally avoided to protect a developing fetus from any potential risk. So there you have it. From mapping our bodies with giant magnets to tracking cellular energy with tiny tracers, these technologies are just incredible. They've totally changed medicine. They give us these windows into ourselves that honestly would have seemed like pure science fiction not that long ago. And it really makes you wonder, right? As these windows get clearer and clearer, what other mysteries of the human body are we going to solve next?